Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. So excited that technology is working on our behalf today. It's always cross your fingers. It took me a while to get connected, but it happens. And with that said, so excited for Dave Snell and Jason Gerardo to be with us today, as they are typically on almost all Thursdays. And today's word of the day is honor. We invite and appreciate any comments that the audience may have, and always looking forward to directing ourselves in the most relevant way to bring as much value. So, with that said, I'll turn it over to Dave, and Dave could start off the show. Kind of an update on where Dave is, and first thoughts on honor.
Thank you, Don and Jason. Always good to see you both. I'm honored to be here because it's a great privilege to do these things and be able to do them with you two great, wonderful gentlemen. And I'm sorry that I missed most of January, if not all of it. I think I missed all of it, but it's a pleasure to be back. Nothing much new here. Just heading back to Virginia Beach. Right after we get off this call, I'm going to pack up my laptop and head back home, and pick up my dog and do some other things up there, see my daughter, obviously. And hopefully back on Saturday, very quick trip. But to the word of the day, honor is one of those terms that I think we use a lot, and nobody really thinks about what they mean. And, as a service members, Jason and I, we hear these terms: honor, commitment, courage, or the Navy and Marine Corps core values. But I don't think people really think about them very much. So I looked up online the Navy's definition of honor, which I don't think is necessarily the right one for everyone. But it means that we're conducting ourselves with integrity, honesty, and accountability, being honest and truthful in all dealings. And I think if we can do those things, we bring honor amongst ourselves and our organizations, our families, depending on if you want to take the Eastern or Western value system and honor. I like the Eastern thinking a lot more than I do the Western often. But, it's one of those things that we go through in our lives as military members that we think about pretty often is, are we going to do this with honor, or are we going to do this, the wrong way? But integrity is a big piece of it. I'll leave it at that and hand over to Jason.
Yeah, Jason, love to hear you. Well, before that, let me just share that Omar is in our presence. Omar
Nice.
is a very honorable gentleman. I was honored myself to be the, I don't know what you call it, the helper on the finals for a Zoom party. Leslie Flowers was there with two other women. And I was the guy that if they couldn't figure out the answer, they would go to, not saying I would have the answer, but I was a resource. A lot of fun. And Omar is really doing a lot of wonderful things. He's a fan of mine as well as I am of his. Usman's here. Great to see you. Yeah. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jason.
Yeah, great to be here with both of you again today. And this word, I think, was picked maybe because of our backgrounds. But, it's one of those words that, as David just said, it's semantically loaded, and meaning it has a ton of definitions. Before we start these, and these conversations go where they go. And that's one thing I love about LinkedIn Live and about this program that Don has developed, is that it's, it's open to what shows up, and the community shows up, and that adds to it. However, with that said, I always do want to be somewhat prepared in the sense of having an idea of kind of what the textbook definition is, because all this stuff has different meanings to different people. The word honor is what we call semantically packed, meaning there's so many meanings to it. There's so much going on. I'm going to let's just go on with that. Things are going well for me in my business, and I was able to do a presentation for Stop Stigma, talking about stopping the stigma of mental health. And I had a high school. I did 4 different presentations, and that was truly, not to be facetious, that was truly an honor, and it was pretty amazing. So good things going on, and getting out in the community and kind of sharing that good word about what's going on with mental health and how we can help each other and support each other. And that's what I love about this too, is we support each other. Looking up the definitions of honor, I found 2 that kind of speak to I found several and I wrote them down, but two that really stuck out to me is adherence to what is right or a conventional standard of conduct. And I think that's what the military kind of does find. And then to regard with great respect. And I think people honor the military because of the way the military honors their duty. And so, I would love to hear from the community kind of what honor means to them and how it touches them in their lives, because words do matter. And the way we look at things do direct how we live our lives. So I think this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. And you guys really gave me a launching pad to take honor to the next point. And honor is a lot to do with recognition, distinction. You can be honored from the external side of things, from people, but you can also honor yourself. And how you honor yourself is really how you project. And there are qualities that come with honor, and there's responsibility that comes with honor, because usually people support you in a quality way, and they'll honor you by maybe commenting on your post in a positive way, and you find yourself in a little bit more rarefied air when you can achieve that, especially when deep down you did something for it. Right. There's a lot of false honor out there where people will grab something, attach to it, and ride the wave, but it never lasts because it's not sustainable. There's not enough fuel, and after a while, honor turns into boastfulness, where it's, let me tell you about how great I am and how much I do and how much money I have, or whatever it is, as opposed to, I think, an internal integrity system that just, you're just really aware early what's right and what's wrong. And being honorable is doing the right thing even when you can do the wrong thing and maybe even get away with it. But that's something, the baggage you'll carry. And, at a certain point, you want to deal with honesty as part of honor. They start with the same 3 letters, and really be true to who you want to be, who you are. And I think also the value you bring to others, because there can't be a lot of honor in a vacuum. It has to be displayed in someone's actions. So with that, I'll swing it right back to Dave and see where we can go from here.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've brought up several times in the past, and I think you're leaning a little bit into it, maybe I'm just taking it down my own route here, but ethical, and how do we act, having a level of boundary one way or the other of how we are going to act as a community, as a nation, as a global, community. Ethics has a big part of this as well, and how we establish our rules that bring honor to ourselves and our country, our interactions, etc. But to your point, Don, I want to expand on it a little bit. The problem becomes ego. Hey, I did something. We did touch on this last week. If you do something with honor and you bring in, integrity upon yourself or your organization, and then you boast about it, your ego is getting the price tag, not the benefit of what you've done, if that makes sense. I mean, the ego is the bigger issue here when we start boasting about what it is we've done with honor, which inversely brings dishonor on ourselves with the ego. So that's my first couple thoughts there.
Jason.
Yeah, and I see the thing from Paul.
We do have a comment here. Welcome, Paul. Just checked out your profile. Looks like you're up in Seattle, driving performance through belonging. #1 influence on employee well-being. Glad to have you. And your comment is, who do you honor? And if it dishonors the self, is it honor? I'll let Jason take that.
Yeah, and I think that and the reason I mentioned it, obviously to recognize our community, but also it ties into what Dave was saying and what you were saying too. It's about integrity and ethical, and and I had mentioned the definition about do what's right or to a conventional standard of conduct. And sometimes the conventional standard of conduct isn't truly what's right necessarily, and right and just, you know. And so talking about, you know, if you honor somebody because they're doing that path, but it doesn't touch you personally and it doesn't honor who you really are, then no, it's not honor. Then it's not true. You know, then it's, we don't want to go down that route, because the world we live in right now is definitely full of a lot of that on from every angle. But the beauty of it is recognizing what's best for you, and what's best for the world, and what's best for the community, and so on and so forth. And so it's not ego driven. I mean, and what's best for you does sound like the ego, but ultimately, if what's best for me, I recognize as what's best for the community, then it's tied there. Then it's, you know, once again, our friend Bob talking about the go-giver, you know, it's all about in giving and being present in there. And I kind of muddied up the word, but I think it's a very important point to make, is that we have to do things in a right way, but at the same time acknowledging the bigger picture. And I think that's kind of what the point is that if you acknowledge the bigger picture and what people are doing, and you honor yourself, then it's a win-win.
Yeah, and you know, it's so easy to get to a point of being dishonored by association,
Right.
by staying into something you know is wrong, but it pays well, you know, or it provides for what you need. And, you know, there's something to selling out and never being able to buy back in, you know, because honor is based on trust, right? And trust
Yeah.
is hard to gain, but easy to lose. The other thing is what's good for one is usually affecting all. So you're only as good as your weakest link, you know, and how society treats all of us is the society we're going to continue to provide for everybody who follows us. You know, so it's not just a singular situation. And there's a point of giving without receiving. I think Jason brought that up with Bob Berg's go-giver philosophy. The other thing is how do you feel when other people around you are oppressed, aren't getting a fair shake, are trying really hard? And today, I believe a lot of challenges are based on social media. I mean, we're leveraging it for good here, but there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of neglect that takes place, and it makes it easier and easier to go down that road when you're in a crowd. You know, they say bad things happen when good people do nothing. And just to sit back and watch and say, well, it didn't affect me, or it won't affect me, or maybe I'll even get a benefit from it. When is you them, and when is them you again? Because it's just easy to say, okay, now we're going after these people, or we're doing this. With that said, one of the top players on LinkedIn is in our presence, Leslie Flowers. I think I was able to do a year of Sundays with Leslie. Saturdays actually with Catherine Chadwick. If you don't know her, she's a wonderful lady in Philadelphia right now doing some tremendous things. Somebody, probably Jason and Dave, may want to get to know because of her activities. But great to have you, Leslie. Great to be able to participate. I was just mentioning a little earlier in Zoom party with Omar, and Omar's in the audience too. Leslie does Think and Grow Rich on Fridays, and is also very generous in her promoting everybody's live streams and audio events every week. So thank you, Leslie. And, you know, Omar actually asked if I wanted to come on Omar's show with you, Leslie. So might be an opportunity for a reunion. Thank you again, Leslie. Can't forget Carrie. Sorry to be late. A Texan farmer won the lottery and became a milkionaire. It's a little stretch, but I get it. Catch you all another time. Got a jet. Great, Paul. Glad to have you. And hopefully you'll revisit us. And we're honored to have you when you do come. And with that said, I'll swing it over to Dave. And Dave can pick up on all this wonderful support we're receiving today.
Yeah, thanks, Don. As you were talking about honor, it reminded me of a situation just before I retired. You know, I was at part of a hiring board for a position in the command I was at. I was still active duty, and I think I was the sole military member amongst a bunch of civilians. And we had a position that was very specific, and we had some very specific skills we needed for it, and background and security clearances, et cetera. But we knew a lot of the people that were being hired. And it was one of those deals where we really liked one guy personally. We hung out with him, we drank beers with him, we had experiences with him through our careers at different times, different places. And I asked the simple question, I said, well, who do we decide goes to the next level? What's our process for doing so? Oh, well, whatever matters as long as this guy gets through. And I said, no, that's not quite right. We need to have a process for this. Otherwise, it can be kicked back on us. And I may not be here when it happens, but I could still be called back and asked what happened. Well, as long as Joe gets through, who cares? And I said, you know what, guys, we've got a problem here. We need to figure this out. And he goes, well, whose side are you on, Dave? Don't you like our friend? Well, stop. That's dishonorable. You're now putting me in a position. I'm building on what you said there, Don, a little bit, where do what's right when you know it's right, but get pulled into it for the wrong reason. You know, the level you were playing there. And I said, this is wrong. And I got blacklisted a little bit for it. Guys looked at me later and just kind of gave me the proverbial middle finger. You know, Dave's not a team player. Well, I'm sorry, I did for 20 years, but I'm not good enough because I didn't play your game. I'm doing the most ethical thing here. And I found a couple of guys later came up and said, you did the right thing. We just got caught. You know, we've got to do what's right. And you got to have processes for this, you know, for hiring, for firing, for general business operations. Otherwise, you're going to get caught up in these unethical situations that make people look bad, feel bad, and actually act bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it is a moral, conscious effort. But there is a pride that comes with doing the right thing, knowing it's not going to be the best thing at the time for you. So it's short-term pain for long-term gain, maybe a little long-term opportunity down the road. But, you know, if you're not true to yourself, you know, you really can't be true to anybody else. And there's people watching you, looking at you that, you know, I remember I had to make some really challenging decisions for really, really big money, generational money.
Ooh.
And my family was looking at me, especially my kids. And I didn't do it. I didn't take the money. I did the right thing. And they all were happy for that, even though it could have been a real benefit. But, you know, I couldn't live a life that I tried to be something. Right. And then just because of money, decided I would sacrifice or compromise. And I'm happy for that decision. Because, you know, it's a slippery slope. Once you start going down that road and you start looking away from what you should be looking at and doing, it's easy to get more sucked in. And before you know it, you become the problem instead of the solution. And there is something to waking up every day with a good conscience. There's something about going to sleep every night feeling proud of what you are and how you act. Before I shoot it over to Jason, Leslie says she agrees. You're welcome. Let's do it. Omar comes back with, yes, let's do it. So I guess it's going to be a done thing. And forgive me, Dave, hi, and Don and Jason. Welcome, Leslie. Leslie's always very complimentary and supportive. So, Jason, you got a lot to work with here.
Yeah, you know, the saying that came to mind as you were both of you were talking is that, you know, the person who plants a tree that will never sit under the shade of its branches. And, you know, being honorable it can be challenging. Doing the right thing can be the tough thing, as Dave was talking about, you know, and that's that internal barometer. That's how knowing inside that you're doing the right thing. And there's external forces are always going to tell you, no, you're doing the wrong thing because you're not doing their thing. And that's what honor is honor is respecting the right thing and doing it. You know, like you said, Don, you know, a lesser person might have just taken the money and ran. in different circumstances. You know, we don't know the whole situation and whatever, but I obviously trust you. I know you're a very honorable person and I respect you. So I know you did the right thing in the right moment for sure. You know, but the reality is that we all have to live our life. And then at the end of the night, maybe going a little far here, but at the end of the night, when you put your head on the pillow, it's just you. We're all connected. We're all one source, but you have to wake up to you the next morning and you have to do the right thing. And so sometimes being honorable could be a challenge because people might not see it. You know, I don't want to go in a direction where things in the past that might have been right or not right, we recognize they're not right now. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But the people that back in the day were saying, no, this is wrong and doing something different were chastised, were maybe put in prison, you know, and said it was the wrong thing. But having honor is saying, damn the torpedoes, you know, I'm going ahead, I'm going forward, and I know what's right and doing what's right. Not necessarily, I mean, I know I'd use the definition of what's conventionally standard, but that's a slippery slope if you try to go down that path and do just what you're being told is right. So my summation of this time is that, you know, having honor is doing the right thing regardless of outcomes.
Yeah, and before swinging it over to Dave, honor has a lot to do with tradition, right? Because there was a reason for doing it. It could have been an outdated reason, but there is still history behind it.
Right.
And I know the military is steeped in tradition and history. And how many people look back at old battles to kind of figure out what went right, what went wrong, what to do in new battles. And the other thing is again, there is something to empathy. Yeah, there is something to feeling and doing for others when there's nothing in it for you. I mean, it's not even close. It's actually, well, it's going to take time. It's going to take sacrifice. But there's people who live, you know, I'll take Frank Sinatra for an example. And most people, good and bad, you know, there's two sides. But I was watching the show actually on Netflix, I guess, or HBO, one of the two. And every day he loved Palm Springs, and he had a house there and spent almost all his time there when he could. Every day he would pick up the newspaper, the Palm Desert or whatever it is, and he would look for anybody who had an issue. And he had a bodyguard called Jilly. And Jilly's responsibility was to take care of that person anonymously. He never wanted his name. He didn't want anything. So if a kid was hit by a car, that hospital bill was taken care of. And half of all of his shows were charity benefits. And he enjoyed doing those shows more than he did for the paid benefits. And actually, I've got a brother-in-law who, you know, had done really well at Mobile, and half of his time was spent donating his time. And at one point he said, maybe I should work the whole year and just give away the half of the money I would have been made, which might have been more beneficial. But, you know, those are the kind of people you gravitate to and you honor. And I think there's multiple rewards that aren't as easily seen. So anyways, Dave?
Yeah, I'm going back in my mind to your comment about, well, one of your comments made me go back to thinking about family and the traditions that we've had. You know, we last year, I remember, Don, you mentioning several times, you know, big family gatherings, family around the TV at night, watching something together, playing games, whatever it was. And I don't want to get political or sociological, you know, dive down a rabbit hole, but I think we've lost a lot of that, and we've gotten, you know, tied to our phones and the plethora of information that's thrown at us, practically thrown at us on our computers or TV, that what we understand to be honorable is not what was honorable at one time. When you watch a lot of TV shows or video games or things on social media, we think that, and I'm not going to start casting dispersions on particular groups, but we start seeing things that traditionally we would say, oh, that's just wrong. But people have started to take them in as the most honorable things, and it's changing our society. And whether it's right or wrong, I'm not going to get into that, but it's changing our society. We're seeing what you and I and Jason would say are dishonorable actions, but kids are being seen. They're taking these as their new heroes. You know, it's very disturbing on one hand, and more disturbing on the other hand, quite frankly. I want to go to Leslie's comment real quick, where honor is a virtue. Absolutely. I love that connection there, Leslie. It's a wonderful thing that I think we've lost what it is to be virtuous, even in our society. And I'll just go with America, the United States. I won't get to every nation in the world, but those are my couple of thoughts there recently.
Yeah, and great thoughts, and thank you, Leslie. A great comment, and her book Errata. I promote everything Leslie does because Leslie is truly an honorable person and does the right thing even when people aren't always aware of it. And the same thing with Omar, and that's who I surround myself with. You know, it's an interesting concept, but I fired more clients than I can remember because I didn't want to be affiliated or associated. I wasn't going to promote somebody I knew wasn't exactly what they say they were. And it allows you more time with the people who are honorable. There is no scarcity in the world. There's only scarcity in your thought. And when you think you need something, that's a bad position to be in anyways. It's always, does it deserve something? You know, and Omar comes back with old blue eyes, which represents Frank Sinatra. Honorable, doing right things instead of doing things right. Absolutely. Omar says, I have a cousin of mine. When you visit them, you put your phone in a basket so we can socialize. That's such a good, you don't know what you're missing. Sometimes you leave your house without your phone and you feel naked, right? But after a while, you're so happy because you're not tethered to it. It's working for you. You're not working for it. And how many people get a text message when they're in a conversation? Oh, I got to answer. It's like, well, that message ain't going to go anywhere.
Right.
There's no need. It can't wait a half an hour. You know, something else could be sitting around the house that have been waiting to happen for a long time and you haven't touched it. But a stranger texts you something and that changes. Well, this is why Leslie wrote the book. Book 2 is 1/3 complete. I got to give you credit, Leslie. Never stop producing quality information for others. We're in total agreement here. And then you guys have gotten smarter since I've been gone. Well, we all get smarter together. And I can't tell you how much of Jason and Dave and Leslie and Kelly and all these people that I've borrowed so much value from, you know, that was there for the taking and wanted to be given. And I think that's important too. So don't get caught in the scarcity mindset. Don't get caught in the fear mindset. You know, I think there's so much more to everything and you can't just gloss over it. What I don't like is seeing people who aren't the best at what they do getting the best positions, right? Because what does that tell for everybody who's worked hard, who built a career, and then somebody just happened to show up who knows nothing and now takes all of the honor? It's challenging. Carrie says, we have lost the art of conversation because of all the tech. If I leave my phone, that would be the best. You know, who did I saw the other day? I guess it was Christopher Walken. He's never had a phone. He doesn't know how to text. And you know what? His career and his life hasn't suffered for it. Because I remember the days I'd go to the grocery store and not have to call home and say, what do we need? Or I drive home for work and I didn't have to call home, what's going on? The question is, where's the fire? Where's the rush? We're running ourselves ragged. We're losing our minds over stuff that shouldn't be there. I think Dave's right. There was, you know, I mean, growing up in the 50s and the 60s, I would say that was probably at the highest arc of hypocrisy. You'd see TV shows. I mean, they wouldn't have two people married in the same bed. You'd have to have twin beds. That was not something that was typical. Anyways, so easy to get off track.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I think I sent us down a rabbit hole with tech and phones that we weren't planning on. And I was just thinking that I'll just finish it off with, it's a double-edged sword in how you use it and what you're taught to do. I shook my head because I said, when I leave the house and I forget my phone, I'm happy. I honestly think, just like you, Don, if I miss a text, it's going to be there. If I miss a phone call, it's still going to go to voicemail and I can catch up with them later. And then the flip side and how you use it is sometimes it is that critical call, but 99 times out of 100, it's probably just somebody with an advertisement or just a, hey, how are you? Or, nothing of real import. And I'm taken back as I'm often, at least once a year, I probably go through all the Magnum PI episodes, or I watch as many of them as I can. And think of all the times in those old TV shows that you're talking about, Don, that it was the phone attached to the wall, or you couldn't really go anywhere with it. And how much happier were we? And you said last week, not everything in the past was great, but that was one tribute I really do miss, is not having this tethered thing to my hip or in my pocket that, everybody can find me at every time. And it reminds me of a story of my dad when he took command in DC, Naval Security Group detachment of some sort. And he was given a pager. And the command or the XO or the senior watch officer looked at him and said, "Sir, this is yours. You need to take it." And my dad said, "What the heck do I need this thing for?" I said, "Well, in case we need to get in touch with you and you're not available." He said, "Well, what's the command duty officer for?" "To get in touch with you through the beeper to find out what he needs to do." And my dad said, "Take this thing. I'm not touching it, because if he's a command duty officer, he should be able to make decisions. And if he can't, he's not my command duty officer. So off we go. I'm not touching this thing." He never took a beeper.
Well, good for him.
Empowering his people to say, look, you have to make the decisions. Anyway, that's the last on the tech, I hope.
Well, I think that's an important point, that it is a choice.
Yeah.
And it seems to be something people don't have control of. So, Jason.
Yeah, great points. And it leads us, it goes full circle back to what we were talking about, is that, times change, values change, and then what's honorable within that segment changes too. And you have to be aware of the world. Now, with that said, I'm going to go back again to loneliness is one of the biggest diseases right now. We've become so connected that we're disconnected. We're so virtually connected that we don't talk to each other in person and face. And there's, one of the things I'm trained is polyvagal theory, and that's about our neuroception, our autonomic nervous system's connecting, and we connect somewhat here, but in person it connects even deeper, a deeper level, and it helps you regulate and stuff like that. But so loneliness is a big issue, and that's the world we're living in now. So our values change, and what we honor changes. I talk about something, I swear I'm going to tie this in. I talk a lot about something where I say, are you chasing living your best life, living your purpose, or are you collecting distractions? And in this world, we tend to collect distractions. We're grabbing things to take our minds off of. We're doing things to just occupy our minds, stuff like that. And we're not spending the time to go after what we truly care about and what's truly important for us, what we truly value. And that shifts what we honor. So if you're looking for distractions, and I'm not saying hobbies are bad. Hobbies are great, and they all have their place, and we all have to have time. But when it becomes an obsession, when it becomes your whole life, like we just had the Super Bowl here in the United States, and there's a lot of people that watching sports on TV and football is their whole life. They really dedicate to it. So then who do you honor? Well, then you honor professional athletes. Are professional athletes people we should truly honor based on them being able to play a game well? And I'm stepping into it right now. And you know what? That's what these conversations are for. I'll be the one to step over the line. But I just want to say that, we have to look at who we honor, who we're saying is good. And a lot of it comes from where the world's at in our time. And I love being in the world we're at right now. I love the fact that I'm of a generation that knew the old ways and knows the new ways and can flex between the two and can have that mindset. I'm not stuck in the old ways. I'm not saying that, oh, well, this is all I know, so I could do that. So my values can be based on a very wide range of information. But I think that's something that we have to be aware of, is that as the world changes and things change, so does what we honor. And we have to be aware of that and acknowledge it, and then live in that world the best that we can with the knowledge that we have.
You make some excellent points there, Jason. And, part of that is not being distracted and protecting your mind. How many people, they go into their house or apartment and they got 3 locks on the door. They got all kinds of ways to defend themselves if they need to, but they let anybody into their mind. They see anything, they read anything, they listen to anything. And, I found, which has been really cool, sometimes I'll just go into a room and close my eyes in silence. I could turn on 100 TV channels. I could lift up anything online, be part of it. But there's overload. There's overstimulation. There's a point where I don't want to know, because I can't do anything about it. Show me every awful thing in the world. And what does that prove? There's just a bunch of awful things. Is that where I want to take my mind? People have cars that they love, polish them, clean them up, optimize them. And it's a car, right? A scratch will turn them crazy. But they'll let someone take their mind off on a tangent, and it's not even honorable because it's not honest. Truth is easier to deal with.
Yeah.
But when it's something that's meant to influence you in a different way, and I think there's a humanness that we're starting to lose, because there's a certain, like I say, empathy that you can't look at something and forget it all the time. Yeah. You can't see injustice and just say, well, it ain't going to happen to me, because that's the philosophy of who can reach higher ground. That story I heard a little while ago, 2 venture capitalists are doing really well, and they decide to buy some land. So they go up in the mountains looking for that land that they're hoping for. And all of a sudden, one spots a mountain lion. And it's like, we're kind of done for. And the other guy starts tying his shoes on. And he says, well, he won't. He says, I may not be able to outrun a mountain lion, but I'm able to outrun you. And that's really the crux of it. Is until you're willing to take care of somebody and stand up for something. And it's so easy not to, because it doesn't feel good. And sometimes you feel you're going to get washed away anyways. How are you going to hold the waves back? But there is a point where you just say, I can't deal with this anymore. And why is it even happening? And that's really, the key that I see around the world, including our country, is there's a lot of people doing things that they know aren't right. Deep in their heart, they know that it's not right. But hey, it's too good to pass up. That philosophy, people say, well, no matter how much money they gave me, I would never do that. Well, find yourself in that position and say that. When it's never going to happen, yeah, everybody can be proud. And everybody can be strong. But when all of a sudden it's like, well, that's pretty tempting. And that's where we get into a lot of trouble, is we forget who we are, how we got to where we are, and who we're with. And again, at that point, you can do a lot of harm to a lot of things. And, I always believed, leave the log pile bigger than you found it. I always felt, make the day a little bit better for everybody. I don't remember having a day where I went out of my way And I can even say with my kids and my grandkids, they never heard a criticism that was negative towards them. I never said, you're not smart, you're not this, you're not that. I could have and have been justified, but it's like, how do you unring a bell? And do you need to use that type of technique? And it turned out that they emulated that and continued to build around it. So you're a teacher all the time. Every time you say something, every time you do something, it's impressing somebody one way or the other. And I think that's an honor and a responsibility that somebody should uphold. I've had a lot of people, my family, that never had much education, never went very far professionally or financially, but they were totally honorable. They were humble. They were modest. They lived a simple life, and they were happy. All they needed was a deck of cards and a cup of coffee, and they had their evening plan. So, Dave.
Yeah, that was a great input there, Don. I'm going to go back to Jason's comment about sports figures real quick. And it reminded me of the statement of, if you want to know who true heroes are, don't look on the back of a sports jersey, look at the front of a uniform and the medals and all that and what we do. It's a twisted scenario in my mind at the same time, only because just as with sports athletes, we see their exploits on the field, but we don't see what they act like when they're at home. And a lot of them come out in the news as having done some very dishonorable things. And it reminded me of the story of a civilian I worked with in Hawaii. Always talked about, these. He was very humble, but he would give us stories of things that we needed to do in our careers, or we needed to think about in our actions and what we were doing for the missions. And then 4 years later, he was in prison for things he had done back when he was on active duty before he came to that position. And I said, I really respected the man. And then I said, well, wait a minute, does it taint everything else? And same with sports figures. We see them on the field and they do these great epic things and make the interceptions or score the goals in the 98th minute because the ref gave us, and this is a very real yesterday scenario, gave us 3 extra minutes and extra time to tie the game. Okay. But what do they do off camera? What do they do outside? And that's where the dishonor comes. No matter what you could do the most 100 honorable things, but you break that honor when you do one dishonorable thing. Same with trust, as you brought up earlier, Don. It's very hard to regain trust when you do that one thing that goes against it. So it's very hard to rationalize sometimes in my mind of, well, who's the more honorable person? I mean, the organizations as a whole do things that are very dishonorable, but 99 out of 100 honorable things can be ruined just very quickly and bring it all down. I find myself going back and forth on that.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'll swing it back to Jason. Kind of funny about the Super Bowl, I never watched it. I didn't have the channels. I got rid of local channels. I have access to the game. I have friends. I have places I could have went to see it. But, at a certain point, it's too much of a phenomenon now. The first championship game ever played in football was the Chicago Bears, and the ticket was $1.50. and the weather was so bad, they played it in an arena in Chicago. And only because I read about this lady, Mrs. McCaskey, whose father founded the team or founded the league. She just died at 105 or something.
Oh, wow.
And she told that story about the $1.50 ticket. Jason?
So much good stuff. Yeah, be careful who your heroes are. I mean, that's a very valid point that I think we're all making. And heroes come from who you honor, and who do you say actions are right, and actions are just, and actions are whatever. Something I'm going to kind of switch gears here, because, like I said, this word is so packed with meanings, but I think it's relevant to what we're talking about. But one of the definitions that I looked at is for honor is to fulfill an obligation or keep an agreement. Honor the terms of a contract. And I think by doing that, you show honor the other ways we're talking about. You know, do you live up to your commitments? Do you do what you say you're going to do? Do you live a just and honest life? I mean, that's all parts of honor. That's all things that, you know, it's not holding someone up to high esteem because of one or two acts like we're just talking about. That's why this came up, is because it's across the board. You know, I just recently, I finished 3 years on the Chamber of Commerce board for my local community. And every year we have a thing. I live in a town called Winters, and we do an event called the Toast of Winters. And we acknowledge the Senior Citizen of the Year, the Citizen of the Year, the Theodore Winters, which is the namesake of the town award, which is basically the person in the last year did the most, and the Business of the Year. And so we honor the folks that have done the most for the community in the past year, and it's a get together and all that stuff. We honor them to tie in. And every single time I've been to several, but I ran 3 of them basically. And every time an award winner would get up there, they always said, they were always very like, thank you so much. It takes a community. I didn't really do a lot. You know, they were so humble and so giving. And it's like, that's why you're up there. You're not up there because you're the most boastful, because you're telling people how great you did and you did one good thing and then you're going to rally around it. You did wonderful things throughout the year, and you weren't looking for the ego. You weren't looking for the accolades. You know, you were just doing what was right in the moment because it was right in the moment. And that's where I truly honor people, where they're doing that and acting in that way. And you know what? It's okay to toot your own horn sometimes. It's okay to, you know, I've got a friend here, Lisa, on LinkedIn. She talks about brag your butt off. You know, and that's a good thing. You know, it's okay to toot your own horn and acknowledge it, at least internally, that you did some great stuff. But those that are doing the good stuff behind the scenes and actually really doing what's right because it's right, that's where our true honor is for me.
Yeah, and you know, when you go forward, especially as you get older and you look back, and your reputation means more, right? What did you do with your life? What did you do with your time? Who did you surround yourself with? And you never remember the money. You always remember the fun times. Like I say, I grew up, my mother had a really small place down in Palm Beach, like a 800 square foot, 1 bedroom, and 4 of us would show up and to kind of like squeeze everybody. But being close was fun.
Yeah.
You know, I had one house that I lived in for 30 plus years before my daughter actually took it over. And you were forced to be with each other more, right? Because there wasn't anywhere to hide. There wasn't anywhere to go. So you'd either be in the kitchen or in the family room. And that was it, or you were ready to go to bed. And I found to be more wonderful just being with people, not being in charge of people. You know, allowing someone else to take the reins, you know, share the wheel once in a while, you know, where people were always into mine, yours, you know, you had it first. People were majoring in the minors, keeping score about every little thing. And, you know, it occurred to me, and maybe that's why, you know, I've been so successful and happy in the most important areas of my life, is that I decided early on, I have an opinion about everything, but there's only very few things that matter to me to the point where I'm going to force my opinion. Right. So if you say, I want to do this, and, you know, having kids, it was always that. My daughter would, let's go to this restaurant. So my son heard about, I don't want to go there. And he says, okay, I won't go there. Well, I'll go there. You know, so it didn't matter what it was. It just became contrary. Yeah. And I just decided early on, is this going to, you know, is this going to take everyone further or take people back? And are you a motivator, a positive influence? And, you know, just teaching kids how to be kids, you know, not being adults, having fun when most people wouldn't find it fun. You know, finding those little facets or nuances of joy. And I think kindness has a lot to do with honor. You know, you can have the strongest people, the most courageous people, but they also tend to have the biggest hearts.
Yeah.
One real quick thing I'll mention, Muhammad Ali. I actually got a chance to shake his hand one night.
Hmm.
And it was weird because it was never intended. And he had shown up for this big fight. It was a Mike Tyson fight like 40 years ago. And I just happened to have a small bet and decided to go to Hilton and watch it on a sports TV bar. And he came in and the whole room ignited. Ali, Ali, everybody started shouting, had a whole entourage. And just happened, he noticed a young man, probably about 12 or 13, in a wheelchair. And he broke away from the crowd. And he went right to that young man and started talking to him. I happened to be next to the young man's parents. And I thought to myself, boy, I said, put it there, champ. Just from what he did with the young man, not what his career was. And I said, wow, he didn't have to do this. And he was sincere about it. And that's when you talk about sports figures, what do they do with their fame and fortune? Shaq's a great example. So, I know time's limited, but, there are people you should look up to based on how they lived their life, not how much money they made. They just happen to be fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. One last thing about the game, even though I don't watch it, every referee who does the Super Bowl game gets a $55,000 bonus. So, I don't know what that means, but
well, cognizant of our time here, it's a great story about Ali and the things that we do outside of the cameras. And I'm wondering if there was any cameras that anybody took pictures while they were there of that story.
Probably not. He probably wouldn't want that.
And that's kind of my point is that's, one of those things when we talk about honor is doing the right thing when nobody's looking, nobody's watching, or outside of and in this case, I mean, the greater public view of that particular incident. And what a great story to then be able to tell your grandkids, great grandkids, whatever, and it just gets passed down. Like, for example, I honor my great grandfather all the time, and I've got his baseball gloves. I've got his my dad has his contracts with the Red Sox and the A's, and I've got a lot of his memorabilia from Brown University. He taught there for 50 plus years, and he's got some of his old books. But a lot of things I didn't know about him because he never talked about them. I've learned from other people through the years, and I've said, wow, that's just great stuff. And he never talked about it himself. And he passed away when I was 8 or 9, but he never told his sons. He never told his grandsons. So it was really interesting to learn more about him there and how we honor these people long beyond without having all the pictures, the documents that you bring up Super Bowl. And between the Super Bowl and the game I was referencing yesterday, it was an English football match. How many people are taking pictures with their phones instead of enjoying the moment and saying, okay, I'm here, and then talking about it later and let the story just grow as ever it will, as it's want to be. But those are just wonderful things to have happen. I just trying to tie two things there with your story about Ali, I think is very interesting. And I'll finish off knowing again that we're running out of time here, is that honor, as Jason said, is a very packed term. I think that was the word you used. And I think we have to have conversations about it at younger and younger ages so that people start understanding what it is to do honorable things, to honor people, to the definition Jason brought up. Because I think we've lost that, again, as we've mentioned that several times, the conversation, the interactions on the family level to present our youth with the opportunity to be honorable themselves.
Yeah, and a lot of it, to your point, has to do with role models.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Growing up, people, sacrificed. I know my mother grew up during World War II. By the time she graduated, 60% of the boys were already overseas, never graduated. And people were doing victory gardens. People were rationing. People were joining together. That's where strength comes from, is the collective community of doing the right thing even though it is a sacrifice, but there are needs to sacrifice. And I think that's so important. And we're losing that. And at a certain point, without pride, it's hard to support and follow anything. When you know better and you know they know even more better and they're not doing better, at a certain point, to Jason's point, how many billions can you use? When is enough enough? And how much of that is being used to help others? Bill Gates is a great example of somebody that decided halfway in his career to leave Microsoft and then join organizations to support all kinds of great causes and foundations. So there are a lot of good people, not to dismiss that, but there's a lot of better situations that could be better leveraged if we all came together the right way. And one of the best ways anybody can do is expression. Is what we're doing today, is sharing our thoughts with other like-minded people who are looking for the best, not for what's best for them. And I think that's important. Jason?
Yeah, and I might butcher this, but the thought that came, the quote that came to mind is, "To thy own self be true." And be open, be aware of who you are, be aware of what's important to you, be willing to change if it's not correct, if it's not serving you the best, if it's not serving community and the environment the best, the world. But then honor yourself. So often we talked a lot about influence and kind of where this comes from and what we're exposed to. And I love, Don, I love all those points because I talk about that all the time, and protecting what I call your unconscious mind, but that's for another day. But honor yourself and be true to who you are, because there's always going to be someone telling you what you aren't and what you should be and what you have to do. Stop that. We have obligations as a society for sure, but honor yourself first and foremost. Be willing to change if it's not serving you, and live your best life from there.
Yeah, that's so important. I think another concept that comes to mind is less can be more.
Yeah.
I remember living a life where excess was normal at a certain point, not abusive excess, but hey, having a third car, having this. And what I learned was the more things you have, the more things have you. Right. And if I got to spend all my time on a huge house, which we used to have, it was endless. There's always something needed to be done, always something needed to be fixed, always. And it's like, I'm not even enjoying this place. I'm like a caretaker.
Yeah.
And until I slimmed down, got to a place where it was easy. And that's another key, is if you keep your expenses down, you have a lot more choices what you do professionally. And I'd rather do the right thing, have a lot of fun with the right people, than see myself burn out in a organization that just grinds people down. People working 70 hours a week and never enjoy anything they're gaining from it. And it's hard to walk away. Why? Well, my parents expected me to be a doctor. Well, I was supposed to do this, and the question of who said, and how smart were they, and how did it apply to you? So everything is conditional. Everything is relative. But what makes you feel good is usually the right thing to do. And I'd rather feel good about my life than feel I cheated somebody. One last thing I'll say, I haven't ever spent a day in court or a night in a hospital yet. And to me, that's something that says something, doing over $500 million worth of business with all kinds of employees. Why? Because I did what I didn't have to do, but I knew it should be done.
Right.
I didn't have to have someone sue me to get something. Right? If it was right, take care of them,
Yeah.
So anyways, top of the hour. Any last thoughts, Dave?
No.
Well, it looks like we covered a lot, had a lot of wonderful people. One thing about this, we open up the can and beautiful things come out of it. It's the opposite of a can of worms. Leslie, all these people that are part of this, makes it worthwhile, because if it's just you, there can't be that much honor to it. The
Right.
bigger the circle that you surround yourself with is the bigger the value that continues to give beyond that. And I think that's where finally honor has to do with legacy. Like Dave talked about his great grandfather. You know, that individual set the tone, opened the path. How many shoulders are we standing on who came before us, who maybe had to just open the road, never benefit from it? But they were proud to know that, hey, because of what I did, other people will do better. And that really extends the chain. And, you know, I've done 900 shows, and I was just thinking, you know, I'm down to one show a week, and it's probably a good thing for now. But I had so many wonderful people like Leslie. I was thinking last night, I had 6 people that spent a year of a certain day with me. I had, and I might bring her back, wonderful lady up in Spain. She did every Sunday, Sarah Dawkins. And if you don't know her, wonderful lady, she's into mental health, a lot of what Jason is focused on. And every Sunday night, and it was Spain, which meant 6 o'clock dinner time, and she would show up. And I can go on, but it's been wonderful. And you know, a lot of things I could have never done if I put myself first, or I put financial interest ahead of time. A lot of times there was just enough to eat for one person, and it was the other person. But I would never had that meal together without providing that. So anyways, it's over. We're over time, but always valuable time. And I can't thank Dave and Jason and the audience enough, because it gets my mind spinning. And I think that's so important, is sometimes you get to live in a vacuum and you got tunnel vision and blinders on. And when someone shares their story, it becomes part of your story. And there's a value and an honor for someone to share that, because we can choose to talk about anything and everything. And when you take the more personal, more intimate, more emotional things, it shows. You know, it's, again, not how you, it's how you make people feel that has that benefit going forward. So anyways, hate to end it, but because of that, we'll come back next Thursday and do it again. Thank you.